Sorry. Okay, so let's see.
They can come back after my break. So I have to go get that packet.
Sorry. Okay, so here's the test review slides. And as we review, I'll type up the notes, and the link is on Schoology, so you'll have the notes. Here's just a prayer. You could pray before you start writing your final to Saint Sophia, God's holy wisdom. And then here's the due date. So your final exam will be due to Schoology. And this is the link to where to turn it in. This is the link to the instructions. For you guys, block A, your finals at 8:30 on December 14th, but the exam itself is due at the end of the school day, which is 3 o'clock. So let's take a look at the final. So the introduction, this semester we studied how God's plan for our salvation unfolds in the New Testament from the primeval time of creation to the rise and fall of the kings of Israel. This essay will demonstrate your understanding of the essential truths about human nature and our relationship with God. So the instructions, based on what you've learned for the whole semester, respond. Let me get that other.
This is Brian, I'm Catherine's dad.
Respond to the question below in a thoughtful, well-organized essay. Please use the outline below to help frame your paper. Please set up your paper with a thesis statement that describes what you will address and outlines your paper. Also, be sure to use the required vocabulary from the list below. Finally, be sure to cite and quote from your Bible for support throughout your paper. So, use MLA format, and if you click on this little doc, it'll this link here, this is just a template you can use, and it also gives you some tips like how to cite your textbook or the Bible. It has some other tips on citation, and it also it also has a works cited that's already formatted for you, and it does have some of the citations, like this is the citation for your textbook. That was the citation for the old Bible we used. Yeah, but that's there for to help you. And I had read the prompt before, but we'll go over it again. God created humanity out of a loving desire for relationship. The story of the Old Testament is the story of how God continues to work through his people Israel despite their continued sin and failure. Describe how salvation history unfolds, starting with the creation and fall from grace, then to the role of the patriarchs and matriarchs in forming the covenant people, culminating in the promise of the Messiah in the Davidic covenant. So requirements, you need to have an introduction that introduces the paper and summarizes the topic and gives a thesis statement. Paragraph 1, the beginning, describe the creation of humanity and the fall from grace. Paragraph number 2, the patriarchs and matriarchs, describe how God continues to guide his people during the time of the patriarchs and matriarchs by focusing on one of the families. So again, with the patriarchs and matriarchs, you don't have to talk about all of them, just pick one of those families. The Exodus and covenant at Sinai, explain the role of the Exodus event, the role, I'm missing something here, of the Exodus event and the covenant at Sinai and God's plan. Paragraph 4, the Davidic covenant, explain who King David is, or maybe it should be, well, I guess, I think this is, I don't know, I think it's all in present tense. And how the covenant with David sets the stage for the promise of the Messiah. And then finally have a conclusion. Conclude your paper with a summary and an explanation of why what you wrote is important. And here's the vocab for each paragraph. In paragraph 1, you should mention the Imago Dei, the fall, original justice and original holiness, original sin, and the Proto-Evangelium. In paragraph number 2, you're just going to pick one of the families, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Joseph stories, and mention how the covenant plays out in that family story. Then for paragraph number 3, describe the Exodus event and its meaning to the people of Israel. Describe the allegorical significance of the Passover for Christians. Explain the covenant with Moses and why it's important. And with the covenant with Moses, you'll mention the 10 commandments. And then for the paragraph 4, you'll mention King David, the temple, the covenant with David, and the Messiah. And then here is your rubric. So paragraph 1, the creation. Paragraph 2, actually, I guess this would be paragraph 2 because you should have an introduction before it. Maybe I should change that. Paragraph 2, patriarchs. Paragraph 3, the Exodus. Paragraph 4, the Davidic covenant. And then you'll be graded on your use of scripture and then your writing style. So that's what the final is going to look like. So we have some time. So let's, that's not what I'm looking for. There it is. Okay. So let's, well, actually, no, I'm going to need, all right, so on this slide, there's a Quizlet that has all the terms. There's a Kahoot, but we're not going to do an objective part this year, but I just left it in there in case you wanted it. And then this is the playlist of all the lessons that we've done all semester. So if you wanted to refresh your memory on any of the Zoom lessons, all the lessons will be in the playlist. So you start your paper with your intro, and then the first topic would be to describe the creation of humanity and the fall from grace, to use these vocabs and then vocab words. And then here is the rubric. So let's add a blank slide. Let's see. So this would be block A outline. So if you were describing the first part of the paper, this is going to set up basically set up the idea that we were created by God for relationship. And as we look around the world today, we could see that there's something kind of wrong with the world. And the story in Genesis explains to us what went wrong, and that we chose to reject God, and the consequences of that are original sin. But God didn't abandon us. From the very beginning, he had a rescue plan. And that's what's described in the Proto-Evangelium. And all the patriarchs, all the kings, Moses, all the people that we hear about in the Old Testament, they were all participants in the rescue plan for humanity. So the first thing you would want to do, and I left my Bible over. Oh, well. Maybe I can remember the citations off the top of my head. So the first thing you're going to want to do is just describe the creation as God intended. So one of the things you could mention is in Genesis 1:27, God created humankind. Whoops. Humankind. Is that a word? I don't know. God created humankind in his image. And why is that important? That's important because this gives people their dignity. Dignity means that we have value. So God made us special. He created us in his image, and he it gives us our dignity, and it also shows that God has a desire for a loving relationship with us. So, animals don't have the power of reason. They can't really be in relationship with the way people are. And so that God made us like him shows that he values us, he loves us, and he wants to have a relationship with us. You can also mention that everything that God made is good. And you can cite one of the any of the different references where God says what he makes is good. And that would be a good place maybe to also mention that we were created with original holiness, which meant we shared God's divine life. In other words, we wouldn't have died. And then we had original justice. So that was the harmony in our relationships. So our relationship between, hang on, between men and women, between humankind and creation, and within the self. So from the Christian perspective, the fall from grace not only describes why human beings men and women would fight with each other, even though we were created to be perfect partners. It describes also why human beings would make the irrational choice to destroy the environment, given it's our only home. And also, from the Christian perspective, it also explains the appearance of like mental illness, that's a result of the fall. So this describes kind of how God had planned it, but then he gives us so much freedom. He gives us the freedom of choice so we can love him back, but we chose not to. And that describes how the fall happens in the situation we find ourselves in. So Adam and Eve they commit the first sin. So they rebel against God's love, and that was symbolized in eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that might be a good place for a citation, right? And so this is called the fall. And the fall refers to the idea that we are no longer in the state of grace, which is being in that original holiness and original justice. And as a result, we have original sin, which is a condition in which the intellect is dark, the will is weakened, and our passions or our desires are disordered. So a lot of times we'll desire things that aren't good for us. Now, despite the fact that we find ourselves in this state, God has a rescue plan, and God's rescue plan is described in Genesis 3:15, and we call that the Proto-Evangelium. So Proto-Evangelium, that means first gospel. See, and you're seeing how I'm just typing up the notes. You wouldn't have, if we had you do this, and you wouldn't be able to write this up in class. It'd probably just take you too long. But after we review this, you'll have the review, and then it'll be easier for you to write. So the Proto-Evangelium is from Genesis 3:15. And it's the first announcement of the gospel. And it talks about how the son of the woman will defeat the snake, which represents like the devil, sin, and death. And so when it says that he will strike at your head, or he will strike at your heel, and you will crush the head of the serpent, we see that as the first foreshadowing of the son, who is Jesus, the son of the woman. That refers to Jesus and Mary, and how Jesus will overcome the sin that happened from the fall through his own death, and crush the power of Satan and return us. Because when you get baptized, you get returned to that state of sanctifying grace that we had before the fall. So that would be the outline of like the first paragraph. Wait, there's a question I see. When does the devil show up in the Bible? Okay, good question. So the first, as Christians, the snake in the garden, we see that as the devil. So I guess it's the question of when does he show up first. It's a difficult question to answer, because if it depends on whether you're asking like chronologically, or the first time he shows up like in the biblical story, because the story there are older stories than the story in Genesis 1. It's not, the Bible isn't put in order based on when the books were written. It's put in order based on telling the story of salvation history. But also the way, remember, the people who wrote the Old Testament are Jewish. And so the Jewish interpretation of who Satan is different from the Christian interpretation. And we see that evolving over time. So I guess technically when we see the snake, for us as Christians, that's the first time we meet Satan in the Bible. And his name is Ha-Satan. It just means the adversary. And in the Old Testament, he's not God's adversary, he's our adversary. In the Old Testament, he works for God. But in the Christian tradition, we have a different understanding. We could take a whole class just on the devil if we wanted to. How and why does he exist? Okay, so we have 2 minutes left. So everything that exists was created by God. So in the Christian tradition, the devil is Satan is one of the angels. So before God created the material world, he created the angels. And the angels have free will as well. And he also revealed to the angels his plan for humanity. And Satan, or Lucifer, was jealous because of God's love for humankind. So he, like Adam and Eve, rebels against God. And there's sort of like a war in heaven, and 1/3 of the angels side with Satan, and Saint Michael the archangel, he's kind of like the leader of God's armies in the heavenly army, and he cast Satan out of heaven. And so Satan and all the fallen angels, those are demons. So God created Satan, but Satan chose to reject God. And so We have the good angels that didn't rebel, but that's what the devil is. He's just one of the other fallen angels. He's frankly not that special. He just was the one who decided to rebel. But yeah, that's where who the devil is and where he comes from. He's a fallen angel. But there's also, we all have a guardian angel, and there are more good angels than bad angels, but yeah, he's just a fallen angel. Yeah, so that's who the devil is. All right, so this is good. We have the first paragraph outline. It's time for Jens to go. So I'll leave you go here, and then next class we'll finish outlining the final. And so have a good day. Don't forget to take the Exodus quiz if you haven't taken it already. Okay, bye. Have a good day.
Oh, Mrs. Reagan?
Yeah.
Do you think like we should start working on this? Like when should we start working on?
It's up to you. We're gonna review in class next time. So I would wait till after next class, because then you'll have the outline to work with.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I was looking over my grades and I wasn't able to take notes on the Prince of Egypt movie because I was flying that day.
Oh, okay.
And I realized I forgot to let you know.
Okay, I'll
So,
excuse you.
okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye.